Welcome back. Well, let's focus on India's solar cells sector. We have CRISIL in recent reports said that the solar cell capacity is expected to go up by 5 times to around 50 gigawatt by FY27. The capacity is aided by government's policy thrust to reduce imports of cells as well as modules. To help us out with a quick analysis on that, we have Mr. Ankit Hakhu, the director at CRISIL Ratings, who joins us on the show. Hi, Ankit. Good day and thanks a lot for joining in. Well, we're going through your report. First, let's get a couple of details out of the way. India is on its way to around 500 gigawatt of renewable energy. And as of now, going by the renewable capacity as of now, solar is roughly around 30%. So by 2030, do you see that, solar should be approximately 160, 170 gigawatt or thereabouts? Should that be the fair estimate?
Yeah, that should be a fair estimate, Nigel. Okay. Considering that 500 gigawatt is an overall number, but pure solar and wind would be actually lower. There are other forms of clean energy which also constitute a part of this 500 gigawatt.
So solar should be approximately 30% of that mix, right?
Yeah, roughly that, Nigel.
Okay, all right. Now let's focus on a couple of aspects. To get solar plants, you require modules as well as cells. Could you give us an updated number? Currently, what is the total module requirement? What is the cell requirement? And how much of both these two are made domestically and how much is imported? Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. See, if we take that nearly 19 gigawatt of renewable capacity was executed in fiscal 24, and you may say that nearly 17 odd gigawatt of that 19 gigawatt was solar. So that 17 gigawatt is what is the overall module demand. And earlier, the modules were largely sourced from China, and a limited proportion was actually manufactured domestically. But that proportion has now grown, and nearly, if whatever research says, is that nearly 60-70% of the overall demand of modules can be actually manufactured here in the country. Similarly, if 18 odd gigawatt is the overall module demand, that is also the cell demand per se. But at the moment, the indigenous capacity of the cells is quite low, and a lot of it is actually imported from China. I think that is where the endeavor is to ramp up the cell capacity, so that just like modules, we are also able to manufacture cell within the country. Right now,
how much of solar modules and cells are imported right now? How much of it is served domestically in terms of percentage?
So almost, if I have to say, almost all of it would be imported from China at the moment, because there is hardly any cell capacity. You will find some cell capacity which is there, but you may say that nearly 10% of the overall cell requirement would be there within the country, and a lot of it is actually coming from outside. It is actually assembled into modules, and then modules are being sold within the country.
Okay, all right. We have a few players from the listed point of view, but that aside, some of them are talking about having module capacity, and now they're getting backward integration. That is, they're putting up cell capacity as well. A couple of names, Premier, Waaree as well, they have been talking about that. But we wanted to understand from you, what could the potential savings be? If you're backward integrated, then what is the cost? How much do you save on the cost aspect?
So I'll talk about the manufacturers here, because for the developers, it's slightly a different story. But for manufacturers, if you're just assembling, if you're just assembling cells into modules, vis-a-vis you are manufacturing cells from wafers and converting into modules, there is a differential of 5% on a margin that we see, including the conversion costs which are there.
Who are the companies? Right. Who are the companies that are backward integrating right now?
I think your major module manufacturers, all of those guys have shown interest as a part of the PLI scheme to integrate into cells as well. So your players like players like Waaree, Premier, Adani, even Reliance, all of those guys, they have actually shown interest to integrate vertically backwards.
And that would improve their margins by about 500 basis points immediately, as your research says.
So it is, yeah, so that indeed is true, but it not only is the question of the margins. You know, when you are actually growing quite fast, and in the coming years, if you have to reach the target which the government has in mind, which means that on an annual basis, the capacity additions of solar, which you saw in fiscal 24, say 19-18 gigawatt, that should ramp up to over 25, close to 30 gigawatt, and even further going years ahead. You want security on your supply chain as well. So you cannot, when you're talking about scale, when you're talking about such numbers, you want to be assured of the quality, you want to be assured of the supply. And I think that is also one of the motives for people to actually integrate backwards.
Okay, all right. We have that ALCM and ALMM that are currently protectionist measures for the industry. When does this expire? When does it come in for renewal? And what is the next trigger? I believe sometime in this year itself, there is one of them who comes up for renewable. Could you explain that to us?
So, in terms of the implementation is what I can talk about. Renewal,
Okay.
when they expire, is something that I'll have to get back on.
Okay.
But ALMM was implemented in the previous fiscal. In fact, it was in the works for quite some time, and the deadline was extended, but it got implemented somewhere, I think, the 1st of April of the previous fiscal. ALCM is expected to come in the April of this year, this calendar year. And yes, these are measures which will support the manufacturers, but it actually somewhere is also required if you are to compete with imports.
And the ALCM that you're talking about, that has to come into play this year.
Yes.
Do you see it getting implemented, or do you believe that there'll be a delay? And if it gets implemented, what could be the the benefit for the domestic guys?
Yeah. Whether it can, I'll take your first question first. Whether the deadline can get extended, it can only be actually, it'll have to be monitored and seen whether the deadlines are indeed extended. But the second question, what are the benefits of ALCM to the manufacturers? You know, if you take cell from, if you are just importing cell and converting it into modules, vis-a-vis you are importing wafers, converting into cells and then to modules. Of course, there is an EBITDA benefit to the manufacturers. However, there is the cells that you will manufacture domestically will actually come out to be much costlier than what the imports are as of right now. So there is a differential for the players. So the point is that the manufacturers will be selling these cells at a much higher cost than what the developers can get if they import it. However, alluding to my earlier argument that if the scale is going so much and you have to protect your supply chain, you need certain protective measures for the manufacturers also. And that is where these protective measures will help these cell manufacturers in the near time when the economies of scale are yet to develop. Once the economies of scale develop, then we see that the conversion costs of cell manufacturing will also go down and will slowly they will start to become competitive. But at this point in time, they will require these protection measures just because the cell prices domestically would be very different from what you get from imports.
Quickly, before we let you go, what is the current differential in prices from the imported products and the ones that are manufactured domestically?
So our understanding from the various players, the manufacturers, is that if you import cells and you manufacture it domestically, the domestically manufactured cell would somewhere be 80 to 90% costlier than the imported cells landed cost.
80 to 90%. All right, we take that point. There is an opportunity, but there is also, an expensive cost. So we'll keep an eye out on any regulatory action that takes place out there as well. Thank you so much for joining in and giving us a lowdown on this sector. We take a short break, come back, focus on the market, stock-specific action on the other side.